I'm Avegayle and I work at a Witherslack day school for children with both primary and secondary school, students who have social and emotional needs, but also have either autism and or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD.
And hello, I'm Nicky and I work alongside Avegayle at the same school. We're both psychologists and we're also both parents of school-aged children. And today we're here to discuss the link between autism and anxiety, focusing on how we as parents and caregivers can support our children in a neuroaffirming way. So just a quick note to start. Identity first language is the preferred language of many. So identity first language being autistic people, as opposed to person first language, which would be people with autism. It's very much a preference. And if when we're working with individuals, we would ask them how they prefer to be referred to. But for this presentation, we're going to use identity first language to reflect the majority preference.
And just a brief outline for our presentation today. We're going to look at what's currently known about anxiety and autism, how common it is, the causes, and think about some strategies which might help manage and reduce it.
So, before we begin our slides, I would like to invite you to take part in a little thought experiment. So I would like you to imagine that you've entered a competition and out of thousands of people, you have won a holiday. Congratulations. So just take a few moments to let that sink in. Maybe close your eyes if you like. And just notice how you're feeling. So I'd like you to choose one word to describe how you're feeling right now. And if you have pen and paper handy, maybe just write that down, or if you don't, just make a mental note.
So congratulations, you have won a holiday, as Nicky said, just imagine that. But in addition to that, there are a few terms and conditions. So you don't really know which country you're going to, you don't know when you're going, how you'll get there, you don't know who you can go with, and you don't know where you'll be staying. I'm just wondering if you could think of now how you're feeling, and maybe if you have that pen and paper to hand, just note down that feeling, and we will come back to that in a moment.
So what is autism? Autism is a neurodevelopmental difference, not a disorder. It affects how someone communicates, processes information, and experiences the world. Each autistic individual is unique, and our goal is to understand and support, not to change who they are.
And thinking about what anxiety is, anxiety can be thought to be a feeling when we are worried, tense, or afraid, particularly about things that are about to happen or that we think may happen in the future. It's important to note that anxiety is a natural human response, can be experienced through our thoughts, feelings, and physical sensations. And it is a valid experience, and we all kind of experience it in one way or another, depending on what the situation is. Just another brief activity. We would like you to think of what anxiety feels like for you when you feel anxious. Have a think about those physical sensations you tend to feel in those moments. And these are some of the very common anxiety symptoms. They're quite physical sensations, including kind of numbness, sweating of the hands, hot flashes, dizziness. So all of us will experience kind of varying amounts of these symptoms when we're feeling anxious. So, for example, my hands are sweating a little bit at the moment. But it's important to remember that these are kind of natural kind of responses, especially if we're faced with kind of danger or stressful situations.
Yes, so as Abigail said, anxiety is a natural human response, and in many contexts, it's useful and it's actually really important as it prepares us for dealing with whatever a situation might throw at us. But however, for some people, and at some points in their lives, feelings of anxiety happen so frequently and with such intensity that it interferes with their everyday life. And when anxiety interferes with everyday functioning for prolonged periods, we recognise it as an anxiety disorder. And depending on the specific nature of the anxiety, different forms can be distinguished. And we've got 5 common types of anxiety listed here. So I'll just give a brief description of each one. So generalised anxiety disorder is excessive worry about a broad range of everyday problems, and it commonly involves worry about worry. Social anxiety disorder is traditionally understood as a fear of being judged or perceived negatively by other people. Social anxiety is really common in autism, but it tends to present a little bit differently. So autistic children don't necessarily have a fear of being judged or embarrassed in front of other people because they don't usually worry what other people think about them, but they do often worry about navigating social situations, or they might worry that certain routines might be disrupted. Specific phobias. Now, most of us are familiar with the concept of a phobia as an extreme fear about an object, a place, or an event. In neurotypical populations, the most common phobias could be heights, or a fear of spiders, or lifts, or enclosed spaces. In autistic children, they may have these fears as well, but they also tend to have slightly more unusual or idiosyncratic phobias, such as a particular song or walking through doors. Often their phobias have a sort of sensory flavour, like they might be afraid of hand dryers or a vacuum cleaner. They're slightly more unusual, so they can be harder to recognise as a phobia. Panic disorder is having regular panic attacks, so extreme episodes of anxiety. And finally, separation anxiety disorder, which is a fear of separation from a caregiver. Autistic children often form very strong attachments to their caregivers, so a period of separation will be an understandable source of anxiety, particularly for younger children. So from this list, social anxiety and phobias are probably the most common forms of anxiety in autistic children. And also, many autistic children also have a demand avoidant profile. So they can be very sensitive to instructions or to the seemingly small everyday demands. And sometimes this presents in a way that it doesn't look like anxiety. It may appear as defiance or stubbornness, but we know that demand avoidance is really an expression of quite extreme anxiety underneath the behaviour. So, what does anxiety look like in our young people? So as I discussed in the previous slide, anxiety can present in a different way in autism, and therefore it's more difficult to identify sometimes in autistic young people. Most of our clinical assessments and our screening tools have been developed on the basis of what anxiety typically looks like in the general population. But more recently, sort of measures have been created that have adapted to the autistic population, which is really encouraging. It's important to emphasise that anxiety is not simply a part of autism, but it's an independently co-occurring challenge that can be addressed and treated in its own right. So this is really important, that we recognise anxiety as separate from autism. Unfortunately, awareness is growing that anxiety is a major mental health concern for the autistic community. And as I just said, screening tools and measures are being developed that can identify it in young people with autism. As parents, you'll know that children and young people tend to show through their behaviour. They show their feelings rather than telling other people when they're feeling anxious. It can be difficult for them to identify and name their feelings using words. And instead, they often communicate through their behaviour, which can present as changes in their eating behaviour and sleep. They may engage in more challenging or distressed behaviour, showing greater avoidance of situations, showing an increase in arousal levels, engaging in more repetitive behaviours, and becoming more fixed in their routine and showing specific worries around change.
So how common is anxiety in autism? So the research varies, but there is a consensus that around 40 to 50% of our neurodivergent children, adolescents, and adults are thought to have at least one and often more anxiety disorders, which Nicky has introduced us to, compared with 10 to 15% of the general population. So it's quite a significant proportion of our autistic population who experience anxiety. And thinking of what causes anxiety in autism, as I mentioned earlier, it is a natural response to kind of experience this sensation when we're faced with challenges. But for autistic people, thinking about them navigating a world which is designed for neurotypical people, it can be more kind of anxiety inducing. And the research suggests that there are a number of factors which may influence such feelings. And these include sensory processing, emotion processing, and uncertainty. And I'm just going to talk you through these three in a bit more detail. So the first one, sensory processing differences. So we all know that lots of autistic people have sensory processing difficulties, and either it could be an over or hyper or under or hypo sensitivity to different things. So there are some autistic individuals who kind of crave sensory input, kind of seeking out strong sensations, or there are others who might seek to avoid it. So these sensory differences may impact and usually impact on their daily life, in terms of how they feel, kind of entering into a situation, where they can go, and how they interact with others, depending on what's happening in their environment. So when thinking about sensory processing differences, we can kind of think about these 8 senses that we have, thinking about the smells around us, what we can see, the noises that we hear, kind of high-pitched noises or kind of unexpected noises like a hoover as well, or a fire alarm. The tastes as well, kind of certain tastes that some of autistic individuals don't like, or textures of certain foods. Touch as well, in relation to kind of not feeling comfortable with someone coming close to us or touching us, or maybe touching specific kind of materials. Proprioception is really our awareness of our body in space. Interoception is that kind of awareness of whether I know I'm feeling hungry, thirsty, or even those kind of physical sensations that we were thinking about with anxiety symptoms, like that racing heartbeat. Maybe that's not an option, kind of they can't feel it as much as a kind of a neurotypical individual, perhaps. So for an autistic individual, kind of navigating life on a day-to-day basis may feel quite overwhelming, and therefore leading to feelings of anxiety. Another factor is alexithymia, which you may have heard, but essentially it means difficulty experiencing, identifying and expressing emotions. It comes from the Greek roots. The A means a lack of, lexi means word or speech, and thymos is kind of a broader term to reflect our emotions and feeling. So the research suggests that 50% of autistic people experience alexithymia. And again, thinking about that, it's quite a big deal not being able to necessarily kind of identify and express how you're feeling, and that can therefore lead to anxiety too. And lastly, uncertainty. So many autistic people find uncertainty particularly difficult. It's that intolerance of uncertainty through research is thought to be a key component in the development of anxiety in autism. So just to kind of reflect on those feelings that you had at the beginning of our presentation, where you won that holiday, which could have may have felt exciting, that prospect. But then when we introduce those terms and conditions, we're wondering whether your feelings may have changed, because it kind of brought in some uncertainty, really. So yeah, it's just something to think about.
Okay, so now I would like to briefly talk you through this model of anxiety and autism, which has been developed and adapted by Southam Rogers, Maisel and other colleagues, and it's based on many years of research. I'd just like to mention that this research includes a lot of community involvement, so autistic families and individuals have been involved at all stages of this research, and I believe that some of the researchers are also autistic too. Avegayle and I had a bit of a light bulb moment when we came across this model, as it just felt so relevant and applicable to the experience of so many of our young people in our school. So you can see at the centre of the model, we have intolerance of uncertainty, and this is really the heart of the model. So just bear with me while I try to explain. I hope this makes sense. So, as Avegayle has just explained, we know that the majority of autistic young people have significant sensory processing differences, and approximately half have emotion processing differences, referred to as alexithymia. So generally speaking, as a result of these processing differences, autistic individuals are exposed to more sensory input and also more ambiguous sensory input, both inside of their bodies, so for example, in their body temperature, their arousal levels, their emotions, but also outside in the environment through smells, sounds, textures. And so as a result of this heightened sensitivity, they understandably may experience the world as more confusing, more unpredictable, and more uncertain. And this uncertainty can be really difficult to tolerate and leads to feelings of anxiety. So to manage this anxiety and make their world more predictable, autistic individuals often engage in repetitive behaviours and routines. So as you probably know, autistic children often develop special interests. Some have an ability to hyperfocus on their preferred activities. These activities are really important as they have a calming, regulating effect on their nervous system. They're really positive. However, if these activities or routines are interrupted, or if a child worries that they will be interrupted, then this can also lead to an escalation in anxiety. And then finally, at the bottom of the model, there's another pathway to anxiety. And we can see that alexithymia can lead to maladaptive emotion regulation strategies, which can also contribute to feelings of anxiety. So examples of maladaptive emotion regulation strategies could be emotional suppression, so pushing away or ignoring your feelings, or perhaps self-harm or self-injurious behaviours. So how do we support our children and young people? So by having a good understanding of the possible causes of anxiety, we can also use this model to think about how we can best support our young people when we take into account all the different components involved in anxiety. So across our Witherslack group settings, we offer support in all of these areas of the model in a number of different ways. We support their sensory processing differences by providing consistent and predictable environments and routines, sensory circuits and sensory toolkits in the classroom. In our neuroaffirming environments, we adopt a strength-based approach, and we very much focus on our young people's unique talents and abilities. Enrichment activities provide opportunities for exploration and identity development, and learning is tailored to individual interests. We support young people with alexithymia and emotion regulation difficulties through universal programs such as the Zones of Regulation and Emotion Coaching. And we also help our young people to develop skills to manage their anxiety through the provision of small group and one-to-one interventions, such as psychoeducation, cognitive behaviour therapy, creative therapies, and mindfulness. And so, yeah, coming back to the heart of the model, the intolerance of uncertainty, there is a growing body of research supporting the importance of actually embracing uncertainty and in order to reduce feelings of anxiety in everyday situations for autistic children.
So Nicky has just introduced us to that kind of understanding the anxiety within autism. And as Nicky kind of explained, it's uncertainty, that intolerance of uncertainty is the centre of that model. And this model has been used in a relatively new parent group intervention, which teaches parents skills and strategies to increase their child's tolerance of uncertainty in everyday situations. And this really is a kind of intervention really which has kind of started in 2022, and it was a trial based on this model, and it's an 8-week intervention which gradually helps parents understand uncertainty and helps their parents kind of deal with their uncertainty in kind of a safe environment. And the idea really is for parents and carers really to stretch their comfort zone, because it's thinking about, well, how can we make our children feel more secure with uncertainty? And it kind of goes against our kind of a natural instinct as parents, is really to protect our children. You know, if they're feeling anxious, let's make it more manageable for them. So we might prepare them for something that's happening that might be kind of something new for them. So that might help reduce anxiety in the short term, but kind of in the longer term, the message that our children may get is that if we kind of continue to prepare them, overly prepare them, then that may make them feel that they should avoid or fear kind of uncertain situations. So this is kind of the importance of trying to embrace uncertainty. It's based on this kind of cognitive behavioural therapy, thinking about how our feelings impact our thoughts and our behaviour. But the different thing about cues is really this exposure via virtual reality. So the intervention tries to encourage our parents really to use kind of stories and play to work through that kind of a particular situation which they find kind of anxiety provoking, that they, for example, kind of going to a restaurant. So you would kind of work through that in a very gentle and at the child's own pace as well.
So here we have our $1 million question. How do we give our children the structure and predictability they need and help them to embrace uncertainty? It might feel that we're contradicting ourselves. It might feel that we're saying the exact opposite of what you've been told as a parent or what you feel as a parent of an autistic child. And you might think, well, surely my child just needs predictability, routine, and safety. And why expose them to unnecessary uncertainty that's going to cause anxiety? Well, the answer is we need both. Children need both safety and challenge in order to learn, develop resilience, and hopefully go on to lead meaningful, fulfilling lives. And as parents, we need to find a balance between the two. It's not a static thing. So there might be times when a child needs more safety and less challenge, but there will also be times when perhaps the scales tip the other way and our children need a gentle nudge out of their comfort zone, and they can be encouraged to take small risks. So of course, this is a challenge for all parents, and it can be really, really tricky to get the balance right. As our children grow up, their needs are continually changing and the parameters for us as parents are constantly shifting. So we're inevitably going to get things wrong and make mistakes along the way, and that's okay. We can only do our best. But it gives us something to think about long term. So, supporting our children to embrace uncertainty. So, embracing uncertainty is a mindset, and it's very much a long-term goal. At the moment, you and your child might not be ready to make any changes, and that's absolutely fine. But if you feel that this is something you would like to explore, we suggest taking baby steps and not putting any pressure on yourself to make big changes all at once. The cues intervention actually encourages parents and their children to become uncertainty detectives. So just perhaps start by observing and noticing what situations make your child feel particularly anxious. And is uncertainty an issue for them? It might not be, but perhaps it is. And if it is, do they find uncertainty especially difficult in some situations, but not others? So it's just about observing and noticing to begin with. You might want to think about if there are any fun activities that your child and maybe even your whole family are missing out on because of anxiety. Are there things that you would like to do or places you'd like to go, but you don't go because you're too worried about what might happen or what might go wrong? Perhaps you've had lots of negative experiences in the past, negative interactions with strangers or perceived judgment. And so understandably, you want to shield your child and yourself from that sort of potential unpleasant situations. But maybe you're someone who likes to be 100% sure before you do something. Your child might not be ready to try new things in real life, but as a first step at home, you can maybe begin to explore the possibility through stories, play, and animations or cartoons. So as an example, perhaps your child would, or you think your child would love swimming, but they're too anxious to go to swimming lessons. You could maybe play with them at home. You could role play swimming pool scenarios with their favorite cuddly toys or small world toys. Or if they like making things, you could use various materials such as modeling clay, or if they're arty, you could use drawings or cartoon strips. Especially for older children, comic strips can be a nice visual way of helping you to explore your child's thoughts and feelings about certain situations. And also, actually, lots of children's books and stories cover themes around uncertainty and change. And you probably already have some on your bookshelves at home. My children went through a phase of loving a particular book called Scaredy Squirrel, which is about a squirrel who never leaves his nut tree. And he has a very strict routine down to the minute. And then one day, his worst nightmare happens and he finds himself out of the tree. But he has to leap into the unknown, but he actually goes on to discover that new and exciting things happen. So it's a really lovely story.
And my eldest son absolutely loves The Koala Who Could. It's a lovely book about a koala who absolutely loves his eucalyptus tree, and he's happily just in his eucalyptus tree eating the leaves. All his animal friends are asking him to come down. His name's Kevin, and he said he's fine up here because he can't find the courage to get down the tree. But then, unfortunately, the woodpecker pecks the tree, and eventually the tree trunk comes down, and he had to come down. But when he was on the ground, he realised there were so many animals and friends that were there and excited to see him. And then from that moment, he believed that he could. So it was a really lovely story that I share with my child.
Another lovely example of a story that addresses themes of uncertainty and change is in an episode of Bluey called The Sign. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Bluey. We are Bluey fans. Even my 13-year-old son secretly loves Bluey. So we just thought we'd show you a short clip.
Bluey, you're supposed to be at Flower Girl practice. Sorry, Muffin. I don't feel like it right now. Why not? She's upset because she doesn't want Dad to sell her house, but I don't mind. Oh. Well, then you need to get rid of that sign. Huh? That sign means the house is for selling. So if you get rid of it, then the house won't be for selling anymore. Then everything will work out. That's it, Muffin. We just need to get rid of the sign. Woo! Come on, Flower Girls.
So I know it's only a really short clip, but as you can see, Bluey's really anxious about the move. And so the whole family are facing the prospect of moving due to Dad's new job. And Bluey's anxious about having to leave their house, and the parents are grappling with their own feelings. And the episode explores how the family deals with these feelings, and ultimately they end up deciding to stay. And that it sort of shows that sometimes the best outcomes are unexpected. But it's a lovely episode. I know it can be hard to find the time to sit down with our children and watch their favourite programmes. It's usually a useful opportunity to get on with things around the house. But if you have time, it can be so beneficial to just sit down with them and maybe talk about any of the ideas and themes that come up.
So coming back to embracing uncertainty as a parent or carer, I think Nicky's touched upon some of these things, but it's really that kind of adopting the mindset that it is good for you to take small risks and challenge yourself and make trying new things a regular part of your life. And you can even kind of try and phrase it with your children that you're trying to build a tolerance of uncertainty muscle. So you'll need to practice it regularly, because they may see you or your partner kind of working out, and you talk about the positives, the benefits of kind of keeping fit in that way. And it's really just trying to kind of reframe really what you're trying to do. And it's really maintaining that curious and open approach, and really finding those opportunities to kind of narrate aloud, really, between you and your partner or yourself and family members. If there's a situation that even if you find okay with and you don't feel any degree of anxiety, but you may feel that your child feels a little bit anxious about, you could kind of play to that if they're within earshot as well.
So we put together an anxiety toolbox. We just have some strategies listed here that will help them cope in uncertain situations. And some of these things might be helpful for them, and you may be familiar with some of these ideas already. So a simple coping card can be really effective. Just having a positive message written on a small piece of paper that a young person can keep in their pocket. For example, you can do this, or don't give up. Just a nice, encouraging message that is sort of using words that are meaningful to the child, or perhaps even a picture that gives them courage. Progressive muscle relaxation is also really effective. It involves tensing and relaxing each part of your body in turn, and it's widely available on the internet and in various apps, YouTube videos. You can easily download a script online that you can actually read out yourself to your child. And if you wanted to, you could make a recording of your voice so that your child can listen back to it. Whatever works best for them. There are scripts for both older and younger children. Some children benefit from mindfulness meditation, and there are lots of great apps out there. Some of the well-known ones include Headspace, Calm, and Smiling Mind. These all have meditations for both children and adults. I think most of them have subscription plans, but they often include a free trial if you want to just sort of give it a go before signing up. I believe Smiling Mind is free. 5 Things is a simple mindfulness technique that can be extremely useful when your child is dysregulated. So it's very simple. You just ask your child to name 5 things that they can see, 4 things that they can touch, 3 things that they can hear, 2 things they can smell, and then finally you ask them to take in 1 long, slow breath in and out. And this technique interrupts the anxious thoughts and just brings them back into the present moment. There's a really nice document that's produced by Sheffield Children's NHS Foundation Trust that's easy to download on the internet. It's called Relaxation and Calming Strategies. I'll just hold it up so hopefully you're able to see that. And it summarises most of the techniques and strategies that are listed here. We've also listed it at the end of the presentation in the resources page. So ideally, you would want to practice these relaxation skills when your child is already feeling safe and calm. That way, they'll have a chance to kind of practice and really kind of develop the skills so that they become they're sort of more instinctual when they're actually in a difficult situation. And it does get easier over time. It just requires a bit of time and patience. So I've already mentioned a few meditation apps, but we just wanted to show you 2 more particularly sweet apps that have been designed specifically for children.
First one we're going to talk about is something called Molehill Autistica. We've taken screenshots of kind of the main options, really. So when you download it, the first screen you'll have is the one on your left. So it says ready for your daily check-in. So you can either check in and then it will go to the next screen. How anxious have you been today? And then you can kind of use the sliding scale. And then you can also document what you've been anxious about today. So it kind of creates a diary, which is really nice. There's also the worry mountain. If you click that, it will go to the third screenshot. What are you worried about? And then you can personalize this into your own worries, 3 main worries. And then it kind of goes to the next screen, worries unlocked for 30 seconds. And then it goes to the next screen where you can see the balloon and it says work stress, and then the work stress disappears into the sky, which is really nice. You could also select a breathing exercise, which takes you through kind of similar to what Nicky's just mentioned. But also there is another option, I need help right now. If the young person or child kind of needs that assistance, if they feel like they're in crisis, then you could actually add an emergency contact, which it will kind of direct and save in the app, or it kind of includes the Samaritan's number as well, which is a really nice app to look into.
Positive Penguins is a very cute app that's aimed at 8 to 12-year-olds. It has 4 positive penguins who guide children through lessons on mindfulness and relaxation skills and help challenge negative thinking. So it's very interactive and it has a game mode. So it's really engaging and fun for children. So to summarise what we've talked about today, we focused on the link between various factors and anxiety experienced by our autistic children and young people. And our key takeaway message is really around the importance of embracing uncertainty. So if we think back to the little holiday experiment, none of us as human beings like uncertainty. We don't like change. It can be really difficult, but it's especially difficult for autistic people and neurodivergent individuals generally due to their processing differences. So the world can be a very social, busy, sensory and changeable place, and these things can be overwhelming when it all just gets too much sometimes, and it can cause understandably high levels of anxiety. So uncertainty, sadly, is a fact of life, and sometimes that will be challenging, but perhaps if we can accept it, we can accept this fact and try to embrace it, and maybe sometimes step out of our comfort zones, there could be new, exciting things around the corner. And if we believe this, and we can model this in our approach to our lives as parents, then hopefully this could trickle down to our children. We hope that we've given you a few things to think about and some practical ideas for you to try at home.
And also, we just wanted to include this as well. We've spoken about the importance of uncertainty, kind of embracing uncertainty in your child's life. But also just remember, as a parent and carer, you are your child's biggest advocate and support. Trust your instincts and seek support as well if you need. And remember to take care of yourself too. And here are kind of some of the references and resources we've used for this presentation that we have mentioned. The the links at the bottom, which are the cues. If you are interested in learning a bit more about the actual research related to the cues intervention, then they are available on the internet, and you can download the full PDF versions.
And finally, we've just included some pictures of a couple of the books that Avegayle and I spoke about. We also included The Gruffalo's Child, because that's a lovely story, and a Michael Morpurgo book, because I particularly like Michael Morpurgo, but lots of his stories are about war times and uncertainty and change. But I'm sure there are many more stories out there. But yeah, these are just a few.
And I think we're going to move to our Q&A now. So we'll just stop sharing our screen.
Okay, thank you both for a brilliant presentation. We've had a lot of questions submitted, so we'll try to get through as many as we can. Avegayle, is it okay if you could stop screen sharing? Oh, you have. Oh, perfect. Okay, so our first question is, my daughter has developed a stomachache in the last few days. She's in year 6 with ASD and ADHD. I'm wondering if this is a burnout/anxiety about leaving school and starting a new one. She doesn't verbalise her worries, etc. Do you have any advice?
Okay, so the parent is asking, because I just want to check that we understood that she's experienced a stomachache, but she's transitioning into year 6. Is that right?
Yes, she's in year 6 now, but she's going to go into school.
Okay, and she's got a diagnosis of ASD, ADHD, and the parent is wondering if this is burnout or anxiety. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the question might be, if these stomach aches have appeared before, kind of in relation to a change. It is a significant change moving from year 6 to year 7. So I'm just wondering, you also mentioned, Jodie, at the end that the child is unable, it doesn't verbalise. Is that what you said?
Yes, she doesn't verbalise her worries.
Doesn't verbalise her worries, but she is able to kind of express herself verbally, then I'm presuming from that. We're just wondering, I don't know what Nicky thinks, but I'm just wondering whether the parent could have that conversation with the child as well, just to see how they're feeling, maybe not through words, but maybe kind of using visuals, and I'm wondering if the parent has been able to speak with the school as well. And I'm wondering about the transition program, really, whether the child is staying in the same school or moving. Because, for example, in our school here, we've got primary and secondary, so they're kind of just transitioning within the same building.
But even for our children who are in the same building, it's the transition can be very difficult.
Yeah, but it's interesting if the parent has noticed a stomachache is coming around now, because it is the time of transition. So without knowing the fuller details, it does sound more like probably anxiety related to the transition. But in order to think of ways to support her, I think the first step would be, there's a couple of things that I would suggest, was to talk with the school as well, just to find out really if there's any transition tools they're putting into place to help her. And then secondly, if there's any way that mum or dad or carer can have kind of I know that she doesn't want to verbalise about her worries necessarily, but kind of using visuals, or I don't know if you've got anything else to...
Yeah, I think just anything that you can do to just prepare for that transition. Does she have a moving up day, or
spending time with the class?
Could there be a chance to meet with her new form teacher? Is that possible, to meet them before September?
Yeah, and in our school as well, we've developed a kind of a moving up document, which has got a picture of the child, naming the other children who will be in the class, a picture of the classroom as well. So I wonder if those kind of things might be helpful to reduce that anxiety.
I'm also wondering whether there must be some children's programs that talk about the transition from primary to secondary, something like Totsie and Tim, or I wonder if there's some stories that might sort of open up that conversation maybe.
Or even if the parent's going to contact the school in relation to developing a social story, which they can kind of read at home. Again, it's just to kind of, it's a very uncertain situation. It's that unknown, isn't it? It's the fear of unknowing. And it's, if we think about what we've spoken about today, it's trying to help her manage that uncertainty and stretch her comfort zone, because it is quite worrying, isn't it? And not knowing kind of who she'll be with and so on, all these other sensations as well that she has, sensory and so on. So yeah, I think it's key just to have a conversation with the school and request, if they haven't got kind of a transition document, that they actually request that, and kind of other visuals as well.
Oh, that was great. Thank you both. What is the best way to discuss anxiety and emotions with an autistic child who presents with DLD? Although she is 10, she is more at the 3 to 4-year-old level of understanding. Do you have any advice?
So it's about discussing, sorry, Jodie, it's about discussing emotions and anxiety with
Yeah.
Okay.
And how old is the child again? Sorry.
The child is 10.
Okay, and then, but you mentioned, you may repeat the question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll repeat the question, that's okay. The question is, what is the best way to discuss anxiety and emotions with an autistic child who presents with DLD? Although she is 10, she is more at the 3 to 4-year-old level of understanding. Do you have any advice?
I think just to keep it quite simple, I would focus on the body and maybe focus on the sensations, that what she feels in her tummy, what she notices, and you could even draw kind of perhaps
the outline of
the body, and maybe use colours, really to perhaps help her express what that's like for her, visually, if that's possible.
There's also, I think, the colour monster. So it's a resource, which is really lovely, and it's a monster that changes different colours when they're feeling different emotions. So that could be another resource as well. But I agree with Nicky. Kind of keep it kind of reflecting on how she feels, those sensations in her body, and with regards to emotions as well. In our school, we use kind of zones of regulation. So thinking about what emotions are in what we call the red zone, that would be kind of anger, it's more about energy levels with the zones of regulation. So the red is kind of extremely energetic, and then the yellow zone is you're feeling, it's kind of, you're bubbling and it's kind of feeling frustrated, silly, or annoyed. Then the green zone is more calm, focused, and the blue is kind of more slowing down your energy. So that's kind of when you're feeling sad or if you're feeling unwell. So that's a helpful resource. There's lots of resources on the internet if you kind of search for zones of regulation, and there's loads of visuals as well that you can use. And the important thing about zones of regulation is just making sure that all our children know that it's okay to be in any zone. And it's just kind of matching the zone to the activity that you need to do. So for example, if your child is feeling anxious, then hopefully she'll probably be in the yellow zone, for example, depending on how anxious, maybe in a bit of the red as well. It's trying to get her to feel more calm in the green zone, and it might be certain activities which may help her kind of feel a bit calmer.
Yeah, and I think often just simple language. So we can help children by giving them our best guess of what they might be feeling. So if we can sort of say, oh, I wonder if you're feeling a bit worried or a bit anxious. She might not be using those words herself, but we can kind of scaffold, by sort of giving her the words, giving her the language for those sort of sensory. At the moment, it's probably a sensory internal feeling that she doesn't know how to put that into words. But if we can very gently sort of introduce those kind of emotion words, that will over time help her be able to express her feelings.
Oh, that was great. Thank you both. Our next question is, my child has repetitive behaviours like blinking and toe rubbing, and has done for a long time. As a result of a recent illness, he has become more anxious and has developed other repetitive behaviours, such as staring and counting, etc. It has been suggested to us that this could be part of his autism. Is OCD and repetitive behaviours common in autism?
Yeah. Is OCD and repetitive behaviour is common in autism? Yes. So it's quite a tricky subject to talk about, because repetitive behaviours are very common in autism, and OCD is also characterised by repetitive behaviours, but there's actually a slight difference. So in autism, the repetitive behaviours are generally self-soothing and calming behaviours. They're behaviours that help them to regulate. So it's usually something that's helpful. Whereas in OCD, traditionally, repetitive behaviours are a way of managing anxiety that's caused by intrusive thoughts. So they may look similar, but they're actually quite different. They can be different. Although, having said that, it is also possible to have autism and OCD. Sorry if that's a bit confusing.
No, that was great, thank you. Our next question is, my 15-year-old girl we suspect is autistic. She's been having horrendous anxiety issues, mainly around school, for years now. It is affecting her physical health as well as mental health. She nearly went full meltdown over her recent mock exams. Do you have any advice?
So she's 15, but did you say she doesn't have a diagnosis, but they suspect?
Yes, they suspect she's autistic.
Okay.
And she experiences a lot of anxiety around school. Is that what you said, Jodie?
Yes.
And is this a recent sort of observation? Has this just come up with GCSEs, or is this a sort of long-term pattern?
It says that she's had anxiety issues around school for a few years now. It is affecting her physical health and mental health. She went full meltdown over her recent mock exams. Do you have any advice for this?
Have the family sought any help from the GP, or had any support from local services?
Oh, I'm not sure. Sorry, that's all that was on the question.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's exam time is hugely anxiety-inducing, and it's understandable that she would, be really, be anxious. But I suppose if that anxiety is at a level that's really concerning, then it might be worth seeking some professional support, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, because it's the question relates to a girl who has experienced anxiety for a few years. So I'm wondering if that's because there's two things I'm thinking about in the question, because the exams is one thing, as Nicky said, and that's quite highly anxiety provoking, but I wonder if there is kind of anxiety around school overall. And that could be the reason for that, could be a number of things, really. So depending on what the reasons why she was anxious about school before the exams, maybe something to consider as well and think about. Just wondering if, there's kind of lots to unpick there, I think.
Yeah, and I wonder whether any of the strategies that we suggested in the anxiety toolbox might be helpful for her, just to get through this difficult period.